Helicopter logging. It's something the forest industry is seeing more and more of. Heli logging is fast, efficient, and potentially dangerous. It's created a new kind of logging operation with specialized needs, techniques, and practices. This video is designed to examine how we fly our timber off the hill. It's about setting the standard. In this program, we will identify the key safety issues on the hill and at the landing. They include worksite layout and access, danger trees and snags, communication between ground workers and flight crews, safe clearing of turns and receiving loads. We'll also address winter logging and first aid standards. A safe standard begins with proper worksite layout and access. Helipad locations, safe work areas, and evacuation procedures all contribute to an efficient and safe operation. On the hill, work areas must be laid out so that logs aren't flown over workers. If a hooker is working in the flight path of another crew, there is a potential hazard from runaways or dropped loads. Helipads on the hill must be built within 20 minutes walking time from the work area for safe access and first aid evacuation. Work sites should not be routinely accessed by tow-ins. Correctly built pads must be provided. At the landing, safe work areas must be designated and laid out before any work can begin. These are usually the areas used for coiling and bucking. No groundwork other than retrieving choker cables should take place outside of the safe work area while turns are being landed. In the summer, keeping the landing wet cuts down on the dust whipped up by the rotor wash.
You're going to have 100 different variations of landings, and more than likely you'll see some small ones. But the key issue is where you're going to put those ground people to position them in a place where they're going to have no or minimum exposure to mobile equipment.
Helicopter rotor wash is surprisingly strong, often up to 100 kilometers per hour. So special care is needed for danger trees and snags. On the hill, snags and danger trees must be removed from the setting boundary before the rigging crew accesses the site. Within the setting boundary, all standing trees must be wind firm or they must be felled. No exceptions. Broken tops and limbs must also be removed when they present a hazard. These hazards may appear after the rigging operation has begun. Regardless of the point in operation, as soon as any tree or limb becomes dangerous, it must be removed.
It's very important that snags are moved from the hill, particularly in all logging, but in selective logging in particular. It's most important that the fringe area be sanitized by the fallers before they go in. The fringe areas where the chaser and the hooker are going to go for safety. And the rotor wash can affect an awful large area.
When working near a cliff face, all loose debris that might fall under the force of the rotor wash must be removed or effectively controlled. The landing must always be built to accommodate the size and volume of wood to be delivered. All snags, danger trees, and non-wind firm trees must be removed from the landing perimeter. Any trees that could be pulled into the landing must be removed from the flight path. The helicopter must be able to bring in a turn without clipping any trees.
Generally speaking, we want a landing that can handle the size of log that needs to be landed there with a clearance for the mobile equipment, that'd be the loader, the front end loader, and the ground workers of at least a 3.5 length.
Communication is critical. Standards for safe operations begin with clear communication, an established routine that is understood by all workers on the hill or at the landing. On approach, the hooker must communicate the location, expected load, and any site hazards like loose material or unbucked logs. The flight crew and the hooker must be in constant communication. If a radio fails, work must stop until a replacement is found. The hooker must know international hand safety signals. Replacement workers must also understand these and other communication procedures. The hooker must identify the helicopter by name or designation when he calls clear. This will avoid confusing other helicopter crews who may be in the area. The pilot must acknowledge the clear signal, confirming the clear position of the hooker on the ground before pulling power.
It's important for the hooker to face the load before calling clear so he can see what's happening. He can see where the end of that log that he's choked is, in case it was buried. He can also see anything other, debris moving, logs that might roll down the hill. He can also get a clear picture of how the load's going to come up.
Pilots must always be aware of any movement of workers on the hill. Helicopters with external loads must not fly over any ground workers. If a helicopter must fly over a roadway, traffic control must be in place. During choker transfers or hook failures, the ground crew must be in constant radio communication with the flight crew. The flight crew must communicate their course of action, and the ground crew must acknowledge. The flight crew must not initiate the lift until they have received and confirmed the clear signal from the ground crew.
The most common mistake I see chasers making over and over is getting too close to incoming turns, not waiting in their safe area and not waiting for the logs to stop moving.
Clearing turns and receiving loads is a crucial safety concern in setting safe helicopter logging standards. On the hill, the work area must be clear of rotor wash hazards like loose debris, danger trees, or hanging limbs. These hazards can become obstacles in getting clear of a turn. You want to receive the hook from a position of solid footing. and let the hook come to you. Before the load is sent, the hooker must identify a clear path to a safe position in an opposing direction to the flight path. It is critical the hooker reach the safe position and face the load before calling clear to the flight crew.
Well, he has to be able to tell whether or not there's any other hang-ups, whether there's any hobo logs that have been picked up by the helicopter with your back to the drag or to the turn like that. You just can't see those things, and he's as much the pilot's eyes and ears on that ground. So it's very important to face the turn as it's going away.
At the landing, the ground crew must maintain a position of at least 1.5 tree lengths away from the grounding spot. The ground crew must not enter the landing area until the load is released and settles. Ground crews must be aware of the movement of loaders in the landing area. Crews must coordinate their movements with the loader, so that both know when to expect the other entering and exiting the grounding area. The loader is as big a hazard at the landing as the helicopter.
My biggest concern I have with loaders at a log landing is that they recognize the chaser's safe areas, the bucker's safe areas. It's that they recognize the time limitations they have being in the log landing area itself before the next turn comes in, and that they put themselves in a safe position themselves when the incoming turn hits the landing.
The same rules of approach that are used at the landing also apply at the water sort. The boom boat must be clear of the drop zone when the load arrives and out of the flight path of the helicopter. All crew must wear approved personal flotation devices. This includes the coilers working on the raft. Winter logging is especially challenging. The cold weather slows down the operation, and the snow hides potential hazards, increasing the chances for accidents. Winter hazards include whiteout from loose snow on standing trees and hidden hazards from hung-up logs buried by the snow. Workers must be prepared for the cold. The wind chill factor will only be increased with the addition of a 100 km/h rotor wash. Working in the snow slows you down and increases the possibility of slips and falls. This makes it all the more important for the hooker to clear the turn before signaling the pilot.
The biggest switch in winter logging would be making allowances for the snowpack on the ground and allowing the hooker the time to clear. In the north we have some extremely cold conditions. That has a tendency to drag people down considerably. And there has to be a realization that the production is not going to be the same at 25 below as it is at 20 above.
First aid standards must take into account the isolated nature of the work. In an emergency situation, access may be limited. A helicopter cannot be considered the only emergency transportation vehicle. It could be grounded because of weather or component failure. Crews must be trained in emergency evacuation procedures. They must know who the first aid attendants are and how to get a hold of them. First aid kits must be located within 20 minutes ground travel from any work area. The helipad is a good location for first aid kits.
Well, on the hill, they need the specific first aid equipment and supplies that are specified in the occupational first aid regulations. Depending on the size of crew, it will depend on what they have on that site. Generally, that's a level 1 first aid kit and 3 blankets, and somebody on that hill with a level 1 first aid ticket with a transportation endorsement in general.
As the helicopter logging industry continues to grow, it's clear that setting standards for safe practices is of the utmost concern. Through an understanding of safe work procedures, supervision, and ongoing discussions through safety meetings, we can achieve safe heli-logging practices. It's called setting the standard.